Hi, Dr. Vishnu Chaudhary. It's my honor to be here with you. I welcome you on this in this training program, which is of 2 hours. But here, the first slide itself, when you read diabetes reversal in 72 hours, that itself creates some confusion and doubt in the mind. So, I divided this training in two parts. One is, of course, the major training, which can be of, I think, 1.5 hours. And the second part is, we can call it question answer part or doubt clearing session, where you can ask question, criticize, or any kind of argument, whatever, right? Because the normal, if you the conventional science says the diabetes is something which is ongoing process. Once the person on medication, most of the time the person for rest of the life will be on medication. And especially if I talk of diabetes type 1, then there is no question about it that if I talk of conventional science, the way the world is happening now, if the child is introduced with an insulin, then he has to be with the insulin for the rest of the life. And if he dare to stop the insulin, then that may be the last few days of his life. But here I want to differ, I want to contradict. So I just say that in many cases, as far as type 2 is concerned, about 90% of the cases I have seen it is reversible within 72 hours. Reversible within 72 hours. So this time I came from India, New Delhi. Today morning I'll be going back on 21st. So today I'll tell you the protocol of reversing the diabetes in 3 days. Today is 13th of January 2019. So if you start with your patient experimental, let's say, for 3 days, 14th, 15th and 16th. So by 16th night you will know the truth or the reality of what I'm going to present now. Right? So I'm here till 21st of this month. So you can catch hold of me. Right? So in fact, I invite you, if you have a time, on 18th, 19th and 20th, 3 days, the diabetes patient, mostly insulin dependent patient, they are collecting in Johor. And 3 days they will be with me in a resort, and the same protocol which I am going to share with you, we are going to follow that there also. So you can join there if you want, some of you, or virtually you can join. I can through an app, you can stay connected with us, and you can see what happens to the patient once they are on this kind of protocol, which I am going to explain. And it is so simple that anybody can follow, and here fortunately you are all qualified doctors, most of you. So the doubt part will take it to the next the second part of the training. That is the first part of the training is of 1.5 hours, and here I start with my introduction a little bit, my work, which I'll take about 2 minutes to explain, and then straight away we'll come to the protocol and how to do what to do. My work is associated with India, the diabetes patient in India, which, as you can see, according to IDF, International Diabetes Federation, is 8.8% of the population, adult population is diabetic patient. Vietnam, it is 5.5%. So I have a center in New Delhi and I have a center in Ho Chi Minh City. So both of the center working on diabetes, and here the pronounced difference I saw, which will be very, very important in this discussion. In Vietnam, the diabetes patient, most of them are thin, very, very thin. In India, the diabetes patient, most of them are fat. So in India, the doctors, the concept is that obesity causes diabetes. And also we have seen in India, the moment the person they reduce their weight, they can escape the medicine. So this means there is some reality truth that obesity is the cause of the diabetes. But in Vietnam, in contradiction, all the diabetes patients, most of the diabetes patient, my patient, they are all already very thin. Right? So if I compare my body weight, they are thinner than me. So they don't have any scope of further reducing their weight. So that means diabetes is beyond obesity, beyond adding weight. Obesity can be one cause, depending on which country I am talking about, but it cannot be the only cause. So that I learned from when I compared two kind of diabetes patients. Right till now, I have seen about 20,000 patients, diabetes patients, in last 10 years. In India, the high diabetes type 1 patient, very high diabetes type 1 patient. In Vietnam, very low diabetes type 1 patient. Right? So in India, it is about in 1 in 20. If I see 20 patients, one patient with diabetes type 1, as young or as old as about 1 year, 2 years old. One patient I saw about 2 months only. Right? So this means whenever she want to eat something or feeding, it should be through insulin. Insulin has to be adjusted accordingly, and that is very, very difficult for small children, as you know. So this is the two different population, and this is what. And now we are sitting here in Malaysia, and the data here is little bit more disturbing. That is 16.9. That is 3 times of Vietnam and double of India. That is the prevalence in Malaysia. And one more interesting thing I saw in Malaysia while in last 1 year with my Malaysian diabetes patient belonging to your country, that there are both kind of diabetes patient I saw, fat diabetes patient and thin diabetes patient. So Malaysia is a mixture and addition of Vietnam and India. So that is quite interesting. So my knowledge and my understanding about diabetes as far as Vietnam is concerned, as far as India is concerned, both I am able to use when I am fortunate that first I tried on Vietnam and India, now I am coming to Malaysia. Otherwise it would have been confusing and difficult. So what we have done in last 5 years and why we have done, we call ourselves Indo-Vietnam Medical Board, alternate protocol to manage, reverse and even cure diabetes. Managing diabetes, understandable. Reversing diabetes, still understandable. But when I say curing diabetes means whatever you may eat, still the blood sugar do not fluctuate too high or too low, right? But if you see the conventional science, the kind of prevailing science, so if as far as India is concerned, if you say that I can cure diabetes, saying this sentence itself is a criminal offense, right? One can be put in behind bar. So what I mean to say here is that the mainstream science is still not accepting that diabetes can be cured. It can be reversed, right? And reversal and cure is two different things. But what I say from my own understanding and with my patient, it can be cured. This means after certain time maybe as much as 1 month to 3 months, even if he do not follow the protocol or the lifestyle principles which we ask the patient to follow, even then his blood sugar remains same stable as with non-diabetic patient. So that kind of example we have many of them in Malaysia, some of them who are sitting right here, I will introduce at the end. So this is the Indo-Vietnam Medical Board and our content, our research I am going to share with you. So why we have set Indo-Vietnam Medical Board, why we want an alternate protocol to manage, control, reverse and cure diabetes, even if we know there is already a protocol to manage diabetes, that is a conventional or the mainstream protocol. Any patient with a high blood sugar, if comes to you, you know what medicine to give, what is the dosage according to the age, according to the history, that is already set. So when there is already standardized treatment present, why there is a need for alternate treatment? To answer this question, I will take about 2 to 3 minutes, and that is very, very significant that you all are practicing world standardized treatment protocol for last several years. So why there is a need to change from that treatment protocol and give a chance to something new and better, right? So why? Because the answer is here. Journey of this drug rose in 1999. It was a bestseller drug, not among only the drugs, but among the all kind of drugs, it is one of the best selling drug at that time. But as soon as the drug was launched, Dr. John Booth, who was the head of American Diabetes Association at that time, he reported that it has increased the heart problem among the patients who take this drug. Now we know very clearly that diabetes itself is not a disease. It just means high level of sugar in the blood. But if somebody is having high level of sugar in the blood for a long time, so he will have heart disease, he will have kidney failure, he will have eye problem. So high blood sugar is not good. So the high blood sugar causes heart disease, so we want to keep it low. But to keep it low, the kind of drug we are taking, it is also causing heart disease. So it is defeating the very purpose of taking the medicine or lowering the blood sugar. Lowering the blood sugar, because we are not interested to lower the blood sugar, we are interested to avoid the adverse effect of high blood sugar. But even if you lower the blood sugar with this medicine, the medicine itself is creating the same problem which otherwise will happen if the blood sugar remain high for a long time. So this logic says that this medicine is of no use. But then it is very well documented in journals that GSK silenced Dr. Booth, John Booth, and in 2003 the same thing was reported to WHO that the patient who were on this drug, they were reporting heart failure. So the investigation happened, and in 2010, as you know, rosiglitazone was banned, and in 2012 the biggest fraud settlement, that is about $3 billion, GSK had to pay to settle this kind. It is a kind of fraud. It is totally a fraud because they knew from the very beginning before the launch that it causes heart problem, but later on it was established they were hiding the data. So that is a clear-cut fraud, and as a result they had to as a fine it was $3 billion. But is it only one drug? Is it only one exception? That is not true. It is about all the drugs we know about diabetes, which still we are giving. One example is another diabetes drug launched at the same time, 1999, that is pioglitazone, and it was also seen it causes bladder cancer and other side effects, which was more pronounced than the expected benefit from the drug. As a result, it was banned in many countries, France, Germany, etc. In India, you see here, 18 June 2013 it was banned, but you see 31st July 2013 the ban was lifted. So the pharmaceutical company took about 40 days or so to influence the government, to force the government to take it back. So that is here, we thought that there is a need for an alternate protocol. We cannot depend on the chemical or the drugs anymore. So even today, this drug is consumed in India by about more than 3 million diabetes patients still taking this medicine. So, and it is not about only two drugs. If I talk of more popular and longer history, that is only one of the medicine, the longest history, or which is called the safest one, metformin, as you know. So, but if you see the history of metformin, even that was banned by FDA in 1977. It is causing 300, I am not saying 30 or 3%, 300% more death due to metformin and the similar kind of chemical, fenoformin. It is still banned. So now the shocking thing, the shocking truth is, to conclude the whole story, that it is found half of all the clinical trial never published. And this sentence do not belong to only diabetes medication, all kind of drugs which comes in the market. 50% of the drugs, 50% of the clinical trials are never published. So British Medical Journal in 2015 they started one kind of campaign to expose those hidden trials, so that the doctors are kept in the dark. So what happens? I'll give you one small example how it happens. Let's say I say that I'm going to launch a coin. Whenever you toss, it will give you head. Right? FDA will say first prove it. So I do 100 times, 50 times, obviously it will give you tail. That 50 trial I'll hide. Only 50 trial plus 10 more trial, negative trial I'll mix and show through FDA, and they will see very carefully all those 60 trials and say 90% time it is giving the result, so benefit is more than the harm, let's launch it. But then it will come to market, and the doctors, you people, you will see only the report which comes in the journal and believe that. But the truth is the other negative part is hidden, that is never shown to you. So you don't know about it. And with the faith on the medical journal, on the pharmaceutical company or the FDA, you prescribe the drug to the patient. But when the drug goes in the system, it will create that harm. Naturally, it has to create that harm. So British Medical Journal, they launched a campaign, full-fledged campaign, and you can see the campaign in alltrials.net. And they decided every week they will expose one hidden trial every week. So here we can conclude the drugs which, as a practitioner, you prescribe to the patient, how it will work, whether it will work in the same way as we are expecting. So that is a question mark and a big question if you see this alltrials.net. And only one example will suffice to put this part of the lecture at rest. That is ACCORD trial, one of the most famous trial. And here the blood sugar, there were 10,000 patients. They kept the blood sugar at HbA1c at 6%, and rest of the 5,000 patients, all of them were diabetic because all of them were having blood sugar HbA1c as much as 8%. So 50% of the patient, they did not disturb their blood sugar, let it be 8%, but 50% of the patient, they reduced it through drugs and make it to what we call as a good blood sugar level, 6% or less. So but they found by the end of 3 days, 3.5 years of trial had to be longer, that 22% more people started dying in the controlled, the patient where it is controlled by drug, 36% more cardiovascular related death, increased weight by 10 kg, increased fluid retention. So this is among those group who were given drugs to bring the blood sugar down. So similarly, if you see UKPDS trial, if you see VADT, which is called Veteran Affairs Diabetes Trial, so all this trial, they only say one thing: high blood sugar is bad, definitely, but trying to reduce it with chemical is worse. As a result, in 2018, that is last year, 6th of March, a new diabetes guideline has come, you may be knowing already, which is called ACP, American College of Physicians. American College of Physicians is a bigger body than ADA. More number of members and an older organization, and having more influence on overall standardizing the science. So they launched a new guideline on 6th of March, which came in Annals of Internal Medicine, and it was published by, I think, all the worldwide media, mainstream media. So you may be also knowing about it. And if you see the first guideline statement of this 4 guideline statement they launched, and the first one itself says that we have to really carefully and temporarily give the drugs to the patient to reduce the blood sugar. Giving drugs is no answer to controlling the blood sugar. And also the HbA1c, anything less than 7.5 is now okay instead of 6 according to the new diabetes guideline. And the most important, if the patient is more than 60 years of age, then even the HbA1c is less than 8.4 is okay and healthy. Only if the patient's blood sugar is more than, HbA1c is more than 8%, then you can interfere to control it for a while, little bit with the drugs, with a lot of caution. So this is clear-cut the result of last 50 years of all the meta-analysis, which is seen that the drugs can lower the blood sugar, but can it really improve the patient's health or reduce the mortality? The answer is no. Drug can lower the blood sugar, but lowering blood sugar with medicine is different from naturally lowering the blood sugar. So there are two people, person A having blood sugar 150, average blood sugar, that is normal blood sugar, person B having blood sugar 300, high blood sugar. If you give medicine and control it and make it 150, so that doesn't mean that he is having the similar chances of heart disease as the person A, because he brought the 150 level through chemical. That is totally different than having 150 naturally. So that is the most important thing, most important conclusion which has come from ACCORD trial, from UKPDS trial, from VADT trial, and from this ACP guideline. Now, why the chemical do not give the result as is expected? It is bringing the blood sugar down, that is true, but why the result is not coming? Why it is not improving the life and the well-being? Why it is not reducing the heart disease also among the diabetes patient? Why it is not reducing the mortality also? In fact, it is increasing those things. It is, I call it a reductionist theory. So what is that? As you know, for example, I'll give you one simple example. Omega-3 fatty acid. It is, you extract from the food one chemical, in this case omega-3, and you give to the people, and then you chemically analyze what happens to his body for various parameters. It is seen when you extract omega-3 from the food and you feed anybody with this fatty acid, what happens? His blood sugar goes down, his triglyceride goes down, his cholesterol goes down. So that what we call as chemical analysis. So whenever any person is fed with this omega-3, It reduces these three. But the important question is, are we interested to reduce certain parameters, or are we interested to reduce our chances of heart disease or chances of any illness? Or are we interested to increase our chances of living and well-being? So it is, in last several years, we have associated reducing blood sugar itself means increasing the lifespan. We assume that is the assumption, right? Whatever method you may follow, if you are able to reduce the blood sugar, this means your chances of living automatically increases. That is what we believe, right? So, but is it really true? Now, for that, those people who are taking this, let's say in this case, omega-3, we see that their blood sugar and their cholesterol and their triglyceride is going down. But if we see those people for next 10 years, then we will be able to arrive at a conclusion, are they more healthy than those who are not taking or who are having lesser omega-3 in their body? So that is called observational study, as you know. And if I say take this observational study on 200,000 people for 15 years, as it published in British Medical Journal 2006. So there they saw that although taking omega-3 fatty acid can decrease the blood sugar and can decrease the cholesterol and triglyceride, but it increases the mortality, it increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, and it increases the risk of cancer. So the short-term study and the chemical analysis can give you an illusion the person is improving chemically, but what is more important is when you observe that person, that patient for long years, now you can have a bigger and better look about the whole thing, holistic, right? So we all have heard in the story of an elephant and 7 blind men. You heard the story?
Yes.
Yeah. So the same thing happened, that when we focus only on one parameter, then we cannot conclude the whole thing. It's only when we have a bigger look, longer look, then we get to know the whole approach. So now here, why it is happening and how it is happening, if we look back. So it all started in one of the very important research paper. Science, as you know, is one of the very well reputed and respected journal, and it was published in 1922. What all started this reductionist theory, how it started? It started from one research paper, and this is the one, 1922. And this research paper says, vitamin E discovered in green leafy vegetable are with a major health benefit. So vitamin E, if one can take from vegetables, it can improve the overall health. That is one article which came in 1922. And further, there were similar more articles which again and again confirmed that more vitamin vitamin E in your body, stronger you are, healthier you are. For example, one interesting, New England Journal of Medicine, 1993. So it is seen that people who are having more vitamin E in their blood, they were found to have lesser heart disease. Reverse, more vitamin E, less heart disease. So now, as a business point of view, as a pharmaceutical point of view, I can conclude that yes, this research says that if I can put more vitamin E in my blood, automatically my heart disease chances will reduce and my heart will become stronger. So what I will do, I will take out the vitamin E, put it in a tablet, and I will ask the person to consume. Obviously his vitamin E level in the blood will increase, and then I will connect it with this journal's report. I have increased your vitamin E level content in the blood, and that itself means your chances of heart disease will reduce, as we seen in the research paper. But what we missed here is, we did not follow that person for 10 years or 5 years to see that when he continuously taking vitamin E through the tablet form for long period, now is it the same thing happening as was expected? That follow-up is not done. Only short-term result is seen, that taking vitamin E in capsule form, and of course the level of vitamin E in the blood is increased, the chemical analysis shows, and now assumed that according to this journal, his chance of heart disease should reduce. But is it really happening? Right? That trial, I tried to collect those trials. Journal of American Medical Association 2008. They followed the people, those who were taking vitamin E in capsule form, in comparison to those people who are not taking for long period, as long as 10 years. And they concluded, Journal of American Medical Association, vitamin E supplements leads to increased heart disease. Try to see, the same nutrient, when you take it in the form of food, it helps you to reduce the heart disease, but same nutrient, when you take it out and take it in the form of a tablet, it increases the chances of heart disease. The same nutrient played two contrasting way depending on how you're consuming it. So, and there are more examples like this. Another report, vitamin E supplement leads to higher cancer episodes. Means if by supplement you are taking vitamin E in the body, it causes heart disease, it causes cancer. And Lancet, all the meta-analysis of all the randomized control trial, they also concluded the same thing, the vitamin supplement in prevention of cardiovascular disease, very important. But you see, the most of the trial, it came in this last 15-20 years only. Before that, it was believed that automatically any tablet goes in the body and chemical analysis shows the content of that nutrient has increased, so it is assumed that his health is also increased. But when the observational study happened, because it takes long time, as long as 10 years, 20 years, now the assumption was proven to be wrong. So, now in context of diabetes, the same thing, the vitamin E, when you take it in supplement form, it increases the chance of diabetes. When you take it in a natural form, it decreases the chance of diabetes. Very important, to October 2006. So it is not just for vitamin E I am talking about, it is not just about omega-3 fatty acid, I am talking of in general all kind of nutrient. When you extract it and then try to consume it, if you consume it for a small period of time, it may be of some benefit, but when you take it as a long-term trial, then it is certainly harmful, and that is proven again and again. So the same thing is applicable for beta carotene. There are many trials, European Journal of Cancer Prevention, but I conclude this part also with only one last slide, that is Cochrane. It should be Cochrane database. Cochrane database, as you understand Cochrane, they collect all the randomized control trial from all over the world, and they make the final meta-analysis and they present the meta-analysis, and that is of high worth, high value, because Cochrane is known to be not influenced by a pharmaceutical company. They do not accept any donation from pharmaceutical company. They are run by the funding from the various government. So in Malaysia, the Cochrane Center is there in Penang Medical College, you must be knowing, in Penang. Right? So they concluded that food supplement for the prevention of mortality in healthy participants and patients with various diseases. So if you see this article, you will know the fact that when a chemical is extracted and consumed, and when we keep on consuming that chemical for a long time, it causes the same disease as it was expected to prevent. Right? Suppose we are taking the medicine assuming it will prevent heart disease. So actually what it is doing, it will make you more sick, it will make your heart weaker. So that is what you will read when you read this complete journal. Now, what is the logic behind it? Why the nutrient behave in opposite manner or unexpected manner when the nutrient is taken out and consumed? After all, nutrient is nutrient. Inside the food also it is the same nutrient and outside the same nutrient. Why behavior is totally opposite in comparison to when it is inside the nutrient? This is something very important, and I'll give you one example to prove it, make it understandable. I'll take an example of a car. Let's say there is a car, and I ask you, which is the most important part of the car which takes you further? Yeah? Engine. So you say engine is the one. If it is not there, then you can keep on sitting in the car, it will not take you anywhere. So the most important part of the car is the engine. Okay. Because that takes the whole car and you to your destination. What I do, I extract engine, put it here, and ask you to sit on the engine. Will it work the same way as it was working as a part of the car? Certainly not. Definitely engine is the most important, and it is responsible for taking the car further, but only when it is having those peripheral other organs also. The same thing applies in the food also. Let's say an apple, it is consisting of 50 nutrients, right, and various nutrients in certain proportion. So these nutrients are responsible for keeping your health better in certain way. But suppose I take one of the very important nutrient, potassium, say, to control the blood pressure and to improve the heart condition, extract it and then I take it, and still I assume that it will do the same function. It may not. as example of the engine or any other part of the car. So extracting that and then taking it long term and getting the same benefit, that may not happen. Now here, one more important thing, as you can see, for 100 gram of apple, the potassium is only 109.7 mg in a standard apple. But this is what is called theoretical science. In reality, you do this, which we have done, that I take 2 apples from the same batch, from the same tree, right? And both of them I go for a chemical analysis. So what I will find, what you can find in reality, 2 apples, same batch, same tree, but if you see the first one, the potassium content, it can be varied as much as 10 times, right? The second apple may have 10 times more potassium than the first apple. So now as I see for, let's say, those the kidney patient, they are told to have a low potassium diet. An apple is known to have a low potassium. So they are prescribed, okay, as far as fruits are concerned, you are allowed to take apple only because that is a low potassium. But here you see, in reality what happens, theoretically it can be a low potassium, but practically the God, when they make the fruit, they do not consider that it is not like a factory produced. Anything which is factory produced, we are sure what is the content, but unfortunately the food is God produced. And God is not producing the food as we are expecting. It can be random. It is literally impossible to know unless you chemically analyze how much content is there in each of the food, in what ratio, right? And whatever ratio we know through our books, that is something which is nowhere near to the reality. And it is not possible literally to give a number to any particular nutrient. We can say that these are the nutrient which is present in apple, but we cannot say this is the percentage. That is totally theoretical and that is having less or no practical utility. So now that is one point of thing. Now let's say, here again if I come back to this, there are 2 apples. I say this is the one apple, it is having this content, potassium very low, 53, and the other apple having potassium very high, 1070. Now the kidney patient comes to me. I am very careful doctor, so before I give the patient a food, I chemically analyze and see that what is the content and what is needed. I saw this having very low potassium. Let me give this to the patient instead of giving this. Now, very important thing. One is the variability of the content of various nutrients, that is too extensive, that is incomprehensible. And even if I try to comprehend it, even if I try to calculate it perfectly, now the second problem is, once you eat, how much the body will digest and how much the body will throw, that is something which you cannot calculate, you cannot predict. For example, let's say a kidney patient, he do not need potassium, and you give the apple which is having 1000 mg of potassium. So what the stomach will do? There is a possibility it may throw 100% of the potassium out. Whereas if you give the patient having 53 mg only, our body knows that we need a little bit of potassium in any case, it may consume or extract all the potassium. So what I mean to say, at every level of nutritional absorption in the body, nutritional journey of the body, from digestion to absorption to transport, organ distribution, biochemical pathways, how much to store, how much it will excrete, these are totally so variable that as a human being, it is rather impossible for you to exactly know how the nutrient will behave in the body. It is not our job. It is job of our brain or let the God. Only thing is, we can give a good food and let the body knows how much nutrient it needs in which organ and let it do the job. And the kind of assumption which we have in our literature, those are very theoretical and it cannot relate with the reality. So here till now we have concluded that putting chemical in the body can control one parameter, say blood pressure. But idea to control blood pressure is not just to control the blood pressure only, to prevent brain stroke, to prevent heart attack, to prevent further damage to heart or any other organ. So that is what is the idea. But by controlling the blood pressure through medication, are we achieving the secondary, the most important purpose also? So because our purpose is not to achieve any number, surely, our purpose because we understand that by achieving that number we may achieve better health. But is it really happening? All the evidence says, as far as diabetes is concerned at least, that it is not happening. Chemically, if we reduce the blood sugar, that we may not get the same result as we are expecting. One question which keeps on coming to my mind, that if there are so much of literature I've shown you, and those are all from the respected journal only, Lancet, British Medical Journal, New England Journal of Medicine, Science, Nature, the topmost journal, top 10 journals, right, and well published journals. So it is clearly established that the basis of modern medicine is chemically extract and feed and chemically analyze. This doesn't work in the body as it is expected. And if it is so, why this modern medicine the way it is, why it is there in the world? Why the people do not know the truth? Why the protocol is not changing? I asked this question. I got an opportunity to meet the editor-in-chief of British Medical Journal, Richard Smith. He was editor-in-chief for 25 years for the whole group, British Medical Journal group. So in 2016, he came to India. There is a big university in India called Mysore University, and it was the 100th year of Mysore University. So he was invited there. I was invited there to present a paper on diabetes, and I got an opportunity to meet him. I asked the question. I thought that he is the best person to answer this question. That the truth is there. It is there in the journals, in your journal also. But why the truth is not being implemented in hospitals, among doctors? Why it is not practiced? Why still the medication is given? His answer I have put in words. Medical journals enjoys huge profit margins on reprints by industry, sometimes 80%. His answer was the medical journal which publish those news which can help the pharmaceutical company to sell their medicine, those issues are being reprinted because they are bought again and again and again by the industry themselves, and the journal get a huge profit margin from them. So even journals are more encouraged towards publishing those news which can be bought. If the journal publish a news or a report that Apple can cure diabetes, so do you think anybody from the pocket will buy thousands of journals and distribute to the hospitals and doctors? Nobody is going to do it, right? So nobody is going to sponsor such kind of report. It will get limited to the journals only, and few people who habitually read the journal, or the people who are the part of the research. But it will not come in limelight, it will not come in the mainstream media. But the news which favors the pharmaceutical company or any chemical extract, that comes in the mass media. Why? Because the media also needs money to print and publish and circulate any news. So this is one answer which is given directly from Richard Smith, experience of 25 years in this with the medical journal, one of the biggest medical journal, BMJ.